Okay, good afternoon, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and anyone else who cares to be tuning into this podcast type thing. We've got quite a remarkable person, I think you're going to find as this unravels. Liz Webster, who is a prospective crime commissioner. Is it a crime commissioner or police commissioner? What is it called? Welcome, Liz, anyway.
Thank you very much. I am the prospective candidate to be Wiltshire's next police and crime commissioner.
Right. What on earth drove you to such a decision? What gets you involved? What made you think I should get involved? Because it's impressive. I have to say that anyone, and we're interviewing councillors from all different persuasions and whatever. I'm really impressed that it needs people to stand up in society and hopefully for the betterment of all, as opposed to some of the agendas that people might have. What is your rationale? Can I help you with your mental health?
I'll answer that in two parts.
Yeah.
What politicised me was my son was attacked by a gang at school back in 2007 by a gang with a hammer. Well, one of them was wielding a hammer. And so my son was very nearly killed.
Yeah.
He had a serious brain injury. And that set me on a long path because whilst it's easy to just turn around and blame the gang for doing it, my brain couldn't accept that could happen when I looked after my children so well myself.
Yeah.
And you send them to school, you expect that the school will look after them, but on top of that there'd been previous incidents and I couldn't understand why nothing was done about it.
Yeah.
So that began a long journey, and I met up against this huge defence mechanism in that the system doesn't want to look at the system to learn from mistakes.
Yeah.
And it took 3.5 years. I had to take the government or the local authority to judicial review. Ed and Gordon Brown were very helpful. I wrote to them and had meetings with them, but it took a long time. It's very much a conservative place, Wiltshire. So at the time we had a Labour government, which was helpful, and they did try and bring some change. But serious case reviews should happen immediately after an incident, so that lessons are learned immediately,
Really?
because this is about children and safety.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, they didn't see that as the priority. And I just had this burning desire to find out what had gone on, why it had happened, because I didn't want someone to go through what we'd been through. And believe it or not, the current Justice Secretary, Robert Buckland, was a governor at the school. And it's still going on today. So that's what's led me to where we are today. So although it sounds like a really boring thing, people say, why the heck would you want to be police and crime commissioner? Well, this excites me because I really feel I can put everything that I've learned from this experience into practice. And I can communicate to people, because most people think or know what they know about crime and justice is what they see on the TV.
Yeah.
And I can tell you now, 100%, that is not what it is like.
Yeah.
What we want is to have a society, or what I want, a society that everybody works together and we prevent crime. Because I see the kids that attacked my son, who went to jail, 13 of them were convicted, and now have a criminal record for the rest of their lives. I see them as a victim of the failures.
Well, you are amazing, because you probably don't know this, but one of the things I've done in my life is actually work in prisons with a wonderful Geese Theatre Company. If anyone wants to look them up, they're amazing. And it's not about having empathy one way or the other, or it is, I'm sure it's about empathy, balanced empathy for everyone, because I found the same thing when I was in prisons, that partly there before we was myself, if I hadn't been didn't have significant people in my life at a certain key point, teachers being part of that, and other mentors, which I fondly refer to in my life. But I met a lot of people that once you were able to find their story, of course what they've done was heinous in all sorts of ways, but so was the neglect and the lack of care for them from our society, which has amazing standards on one level and then complete ignorance of, hence we have so many homeless people, and we have so many people with mental health and who end up in a situation that can, unfortunately, end up where they are in either prison or they have caused a family like yourself or anyone else's to have a lifelong trauma. Because fortunately, and I didn't really know that about you before you came here. As you can see, I'm not a man who does much research. I don't need to.
Well,
because it's your
surprised?
story. Yeah, exactly. It's your story. It's the same with the other counsellors and what have you. It's like, well, you tell yours, you say why you want to do this. Because sometimes, I know this is a strange medium. This will be on Spotify and it will be, it's very different, by the way. You should listen to it and watch it just because it's a very, how the information's taken in. I find that anyway.
I actually hate watching myself, but
Well,
yes, I'll watch another one.
yeah, but here's the interesting thing. I bet people find it a bit hard to believe. I hate watching myself. I don't like having my photograph taken. I don't like any of that. But I just know that sometimes it's your responsibility to put your head above the parapet. I think you know what I'm trying to say there, Liz. Above the parapet.
Yeah,
so
put
that
yourself
you
in
can
that
identify.
discomfort zone, yeah.
Absolutely. So my experience of being inside prisons or in probation and what have you, and the fantastic work that everyone connected does that under ridiculous constraints. My preferred method would be prevention. I don't want to be selfishly as a father, to be on the end of the news that you received that day when you heard about your son. I work with another family that have had a worse scenario, and I'll enlighten people about that nearer the time, because that's going to be a 3-year project. It's kind of a response that you've taken. So my response to this particular case was, we all need to learn straight away, and we make films, and we make films about people's lives. We're not documentary makers and go, no, let's scrutinise this in that kind of poverty porn area of look at these people, this is how they react. It's like, no, we're more interested in the participants of those projects being the main beneficiaries. If only I'd gone to a better school. I went to 12 really good schools. They were all approved. Sorry, back to you.
I think that we are all a product of first of all, your parents and your genes, that's the starter, but we are all then, influences from the time you're born, depending on how you're cuddled as a baby.
Yes. Oh my goodness.
To how the interaction happens. And then also those formative years at school are absolutely paramount. But really, as British people, our culture is very much, you go to school at 4, you do this, you do that. Yeah. And we've got this history of this justice system, which is about crime and punishment.
Yeah.
And punishment is there. You go on there and you get punished and that's it and it's over. Well, for me, I can tell you categorically that, and I remember it clearly being in the court when these kids were convicted. And the barrister turned to me and he said, well, I'm sure you all find that completely cathartic. And I just looked at him and I said, no, I could have cried. It didn't make me feel good seeing somebody handcuffed up and taken down to the cells. Yeah. It was horrific. Yeah. Because where it doesn't change anything, it doesn't change what happened. And for me, the moment of catharsis was when I sat with the kids afterwards through the restorative justice process.
Fantastic.
And there was forgiveness and there was acceptance, because up until the court case there was a belief that Henry had done something to make this happen. And once we went through the court case, eventually it became clear that he hadn't. So the community, because the boys that attacked Henry were Asian, and so the Asian community in Swindon, then we did hug and accept all of those things. Now, all of that could have been possible before the court case, really, if someone had facilitated it. But it wasn't there, because the police are very much in the mode of doing what the police do. And when we were in this situation, we had the police authority, which still the current Police and Crime Commissioner, Angus Macpherson, was on. But it's still very much that old-fashioned system. So what I'm excited about is being able to bring some liberalism, more liberalism to policing, in terms of how that if a situation like this happens again in Wiltshire, that perhaps I can bring some of my experience to that, but also put more of my energy in to stopping something like this happening.
Fantastic.
But the other thing that people don't realise is my son was 15 when he was attacked. And his attackers were ranged from the age of 14 to 22. So the offenders who were under 18 were protected. They aren't protected in law from exposure in the press. Whereas as a victim, you don't get any protection at all. So we had the press outside my house, and my son's face was all over the Sun and all of the press everywhere. The local press even printed our address. So it was horrendous. And that is something I'd like to really, I've started now a campaign to say that let's level up, the government's favourite word, that victims should have the same protection as offenders, because, they're children. So
Absolutely.
why should
I'm shocked
it be?
actually to find that out.
Yeah.
Absolutely shocked.
So, and as we know with Millie Dowler, that really was it was fantastic for newspaper sales, wasn't it? But really, there should be a choice for the family to decide if they want to be feasted on by the media or not.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more.
So,
it's another area of our society come this new reset, which I think we really have to have. And maybe you're part of that as well, because I completely agree with what you're saying. And as a parent, I'm actually quite close to tears, I have to tell you. I think that's incredibly moving, and I think I remember the case quite well. And there's no winners, is there, or losers? Well, maybe everyone's a loser. So to hear that you're taking that really horrendous experience and trying to filter it, or filter out the worst parts to enable learning and for the society, our community, to move forward is an absolute amazing thing to do.
I think that the power of victims who are often forgotten by the system is immense, because you're left reeling, really, and you've got this energy which needs channeling. And the only way that you really feel positive about that is by trying to bring change and to help others. And otherwise, what your energy goes into hating the people that did it.
So
and I'm never ever
damaging,
going to go
isn't it?
down that hole. I mean, it just isn't in my personality.
Yeah, and I think that, and again, of course, as you say, a lot of the times people learn from sensationalist journalism, feasting on other people's horrendous trauma. And then you have fictional stuff, and as you say, like police emergency. The cold start reality of any of those jobs on a day-to-day, if we were really to consider. And I'm a person that I would say that I was on the border between being a really ridiculous kind of antisocial person. And so that's essentially why I ended up starting Can Do Arts on all sorts of levels, about sustainable development, about art being available to everyone, the arts, to be able to, as a way of allowing people to communicate their story, and working in collaboration with lots of great individuals, and it's moulded into working in specialist areas, like with children in care, because again, like victims, they also seem to be quite ignored by our society. And unfortunately, through my experience in working with other great people, I've realised that they come to represent, and quite understandably, a higher percentage of a segment of society that will end up homeless, have mental health problems, involved in the sex industry, suicide, prison, etc., exploitation. So, and it stands to reason that if you haven't got the two people that nature, if nothing else, whatever you believe beyond nature, is there to provide you for protection, love, the hugs that you talk about. This is my reasoning, rationale around boarding schools. Whether that, you know what I mean, literally, we had 10 kids in our family. My dad unfortunately had to join I say unfortunately had to join the forces. People are going to think I'm opposed to that. I'm not. What I'm saying is, we were poor, that's why he joined the forces. He didn't do it out of, oh, this looks like a great idea. I got 2 campaign medals, so somewhere along the line, his life was on the line. So he did that at least, whatever that meant. But we could have been sent to boarding school because we moved around every 3 years. My mum just didn't get it. And bless her, she said, why would people have kids and then send them away? She didn't. She could not comprehend what that was like. So those, for for me, looking at children in care or the reasons why those people were in prison when I was in prison or probation, they're quite close to my own lived experience, but for really good influences. And I realised that, and family and all that sort of good stuff, but I realised it was arbitrary. The line between, listening to people's stories in prison and just sort of thinking, wow, if that hadn't happened to me. And a lot of it was about expression, a lot of it was about doing drama, and it seemed back then, a different sort of drama you do in school now, that it was about the drama of life, the exploring. We don't have enough facility for our young people to practice being people, to explore what it is, relationships, the whole, they're bombarded now with all this social media, with all sorts of information. None of it well, some of it I'm sure is really useful, but how you filter that as a young person, I'll never know. So there's lots of things I think need to be done in what I can keep calling the reset. It's going to go down, not because I've said it, but this reset needs to look at all the basic aspects of our society that we've got wrong before. Mental health is going to be a big thing. Yeah. What else? What else do you think? What else is? You have enough reason to be the police commissioner in my eyes. If I get a vote already, this could be difficult. If I end up interviewing everyone and think I'm going to vote for them, which is maybe a good thing, isn't it? Don't you think? That you've got loads of candidates that you say, well, actually, but I haven't found anything I don't agree with you.
Interestingly, my party, the Liberal Democrats, were very much against this new police and crime commissioner being, up for election, because they wanted to stick with the old police authority. And I turned around and said, well, I think this is brilliant, because I would have loved somebody like me, who I could have turned to and said, help me, help us. So I am the world's biggest critic of the Conservatives. I think everything that they have done pretty much has been very, very bad for the country.
You mean forever though, right? Not just recently?
No, forever. I mean, I'm Welsh. So I lived through Thatcher's cuts and I saw firsthand what that did to my communities down there. I mean, I grew up in a seaside town. My family were originally from the Fairground, so we moved to Porthcawl. My father didn't live in a house until I was born, and so they used to travel around the country with the Fairground community. And so they settled down in Porthcawl and started a business which was to do with fruit machines in pubs and clubs. And we had a bingo. I grew up calling bingo to people, Welsh miners. I was down looking in. So I saw firsthand, I remember them, we knew the miners, they used to come on holiday every year. You'd see them with emphysema, lung cancer, and everything else.
That's the other bit of it, isn't it?
And the sort of the pattern that everybody was in, and then all of that was destroyed. But there were two things that went on. There was destruction from Margaret Thatcher closing the mines, which did begin with the Labour government actually, but they started it. But at the same time we went into Europe, and suddenly things started getting better for some people, and they were able to go on holiday. They weren't coming to Porthcawl anymore, or to Butlins, they were suddenly going to Spain.
Yeah, bang, there goes the climate,
So two things happened at the same time, but for certain communities in South Wales in particular, and we know other areas in England where they were reliant on coal and steel, it was devastating, and we're still living with the impact of that today. So for me, I come from, my father voted Conservative.
So did mine.
But my mother was Labour, my mother's father was very much Labour, so I always came from that kind of, but in the middle, I suppose, is probably why I've ended up as a Liberal. So yes, I've always been largely critical of Conservative policies. And look, they closed all of they got rid of all of our railways. We had fantastic railways. We were the leaders in railway in the world. Yeah. We put railways all over India. Yeah. And then they turned around and said, oh, we can't afford these railways anymore. They're costing us too much money. So they got rid of them all. And the reason they got rid of them all was because they wanted to make money out of roads. And they wanted to make money out of selling...
Well, anything. The next big thing.
Motor cars.
Yeah. The next thing that in industry would get them to legislate on so that they could make money.
So
like privatising all the utilities.
Short-term making money, exactly. Yeah, and I think that I'm not I mean, everybody likes nice things, and you want to go and have nice clothes, and you want to go on holiday. Nobody wants to be going around and, you know, not having nice things or good food to eat. But I'm not necessarily, I don't think this culture of wanting more and more and more for yourself is a good thing. I think we should want more and more and more to make our communities better, safer, so that we can, if we're all happy and we all share,
quality of life,
then we're going to have a better life.
Quality of life, and the indicators are very much, we bizarrely over the years have done lots of consultation for various governments and or councils around the country, which is interesting, around all sorts of manner of things, around the sustainable development arena, but also about social cohesion. So the quality of life indicators are generally the same for everyone. Anyone that fears anything outside the house or inside the house is obviously not going to have a good quality of life. So if you're inside the house fearing what's on the outside of the house, that ain't much of a life. Conversely, if there's domestic violence, you want to get outside the house. However, either way, there isn't, and there never has been, not in my perusing through history, a time when because they were talking about levelling up, aren't they? Talking about, which is, in principle, if you just say they were like the big society, levelling up is absolutely fantastic. 2015 was when England paid off the slave traders' compensation. Can people believe, just look at this in history, when Wilberforce, all that sort of whatever, the only reason why these people gave up that horrendous trade, which a lot of this country's wealth is built on, some of the big infrastructure projects, mansion houses, you name it. Allegedly, I say allegedly as if David Cameron's ever going to hear this, but I don't particularly care if he does. Not because I don't think he's a good man, bad man, not that. I do think that, however, that some of his wealth or his family wealth come from slave trading. I personally, you can talk about levelling up, and I'm being 100% serious, think that because to compensate the slave traders, they had to give a receipt for every person that they had put into bondage, and then got the compensation, which ran to what would be equivalent about £85 billion or something, not individually, but collectively they got. Now, if that's the case, if they had the records for all those families, and this is coming around to you, and about why crime and in certain parts of society, there's this disparity, and they don't have the same values, they don't have the same opportunity, that's probably why. But particularly people that have been taken from Africa, moved over to the Caribbean, and the Irish were as well, by the way, by Cromwell, but I'll go into that another time. People don't know about the Irish slaves. They'll know now. But they were compensated. The only reason there's no morality in this, they were just given loads of money, so they built all these whatevers, and people like David Cameron were able to go to public schools and able to be, again, another person in the wrong place at the wrong time for the whole of society, because how could they possibly understand the needs of your average person, because they've never experienced it. But the fact that they haven't experienced it, they've experienced this wealth on the backs, physically, the whipped backs of slaves, is appalling. So what I actually think the levelling up should do is every penny that's ever been made that these people have in their accounts, that they have, the companies that there's, whatever, Tate & Lyle or any sugar companies that they may not be, just in case they want to sue, it might not be them, it might be whatever companies that made all this wealth, and all those families that through the generations, and it's not that many generations, have, that money should go into a pot to only be accessed by former, because the records are there, former slave families in this country, and then everyone else do whatever you want to do around the world. So that the levelling up would be a whole pot of money that Afro-Caribbean ex-slave families could access to level up, whether that's in their home life.
You know full well that the action is about protecting statues. It's not about protecting victims.
Oh, yeah.
It's rhetoric, it's talk, it's hot air. The levelling up agenda is a nice sounding soundbite that people easily think, oh, I'm going to vote for that because they're going to make my high street nice again. And they promise all of these things. They've been promising it. I mean, in particular, I know it's not relevant to Chippenham, but it's close, Swindon. We've had years and years and years of Conservatives in Swindon promising to level up Swindon Town Centre. will take a walk down there today and have a look what it looks
Yeah,
like.
yeah.
It is the worst I have ever seen it.
Yeah.
And they're promising, again, in this upcoming election, loads and loads of money is going to be spent on things. It's just hot air, and people need to wake up to the fact that the Conservatives do not fulfil their promises to ordinary people like you and I.
But then I think, as I said, I've lived around the country. I think personally, party politics is dead, like organised religion. Seriously, dead.
I wish it was dead. But
No, it will be. I really think if you look at it, even just on a demographic of what people, how they get involved in. How they get involved in local democracy. They've been let down by every shade.
I think it's easy to blame politics.
I don't want to blame politics. I think it's a deliberate agenda by big corporates, because politicians are just glove puppets, aren't they? They go, what do you want me to say this week?
Some politicians.
I agree. So if you're going to get involved in the mire, you are going to be tarnished, actually, by the same brush. I'm just going to say two words to you, and they are, the first one's Nick and the second one's Clegg. Yeah, right. And what's people's recent experience of what happens to politicians, whatever colour they are, Lib Dems, what did you say, Deputy Prime Minister? You say get them to walk around in the Rose Garden. I get a chauffeur, because that could be the only reason why you let down all those students. Do you see what I'm saying? And you're not that person. So I think for me, I like you a whole lot more. If you were independent, you know what I mean? Because I just think there is you can't possibly go around. I think this for poor Michelle Donlan. That she's parachuted into a community that she knows nothing about. How would that work as a principal? But secondly, she's got to, on the one hand, stand strong with Theresa May 1 week, and then do what with Boris Johnson? Except walk up and down a high street. It's like, Michelle, seriously, you think that these two human beings, forget about the fact they're in the same party, they're not even the same universe. They're not. How could that woman, the worst thing she ever did was run through a wheat field? Yeah, I wonder what she was smoking when she was doing it. Anyway, and then compare that ethically, morally, whatever. I don't even judge anything that Boris has done. I do, of course, because I've worked with criminals, and that tape. The tape of him condoning his mate. Well, what are you going to break a few? I mean, what is that? And do people not play that again and again?
Well, even with that, what he's done to his kids and
bless him.
The women in his life is horrendous. So but I think here's the thing. The reason that politics is in the mess it's in this country is the first past the post system. The reason that the AV vote, which wasn't brilliant, but it would have been better than what we've got now, failed, was because the corporations benefit from the first past the post system. And interestingly, in Henry's case, the reason it was so staunchly defended was because of the corporations, the insurers. And we've got it on record. I did a great interview for a Radio 4 programme which investigated this back in 2014. I will send it to you. Which shows, actually, and it's not just in Henry's case, in a lot of child abuse cases, because the Ridgeway School, where Henry was at, was insured because it adopted foundation status, which was a Blairite thing, which I don't agree with. And they used a strange insurer, which was called ecclesiastical. And it was the insurer really that was calling the shots and telling the teachers and the authorities what to do. And when I took them to judicial review, the judgment was absolutely damning. It should have been all over the front pages of all of the newspapers. It should have been devoured by everybody for months. It wasn't, because who's in charge really? So yes, but who wants to talk or listen to these things? It's such a huge, complex problem, and all we can do as individuals is go and vote. And we have an opportunity now in May to make our opinions heard. And yes, when we have a general election, and Brenda complains, oh, not another election. Well, I celebrate elections. I love going out and voting because it's a sense of self-fulfillment and also an expression. Even though every time I vote where I currently live, the Conservatives always win. But we can get across this by communicating, getting our messages across, getting understanding and building up trust. And if we destroy politics and say politics is to blame and we'll get rid of politics,
I agree with you.
The only people that will win are the corporations.
Okay, right.
So we have to find a way of trusting politics again.
Okay.
And I wasn't a Lib Dem when Nick Clegg was in charge. I was a Labour member then.
Yeah.
And what I would say to people is that I know Ed Davey, I supported his campaign. He is a good man.
Yeah.
He's had a difficult life,
Yeah.
like I've had a difficult life.
Yeah.
And I think that those of us that have had those experiences that we've learned from are people that want to be in public service, because it isn't easy. Getting yourself elected, not at all. Particularly if you're not of that type of personality who likes having a photograph taken, because some people do love having and hogging the platform. But I'm doing this because I want to bring change, and it's the only way I can. I sense that I can do that.
Absolutely. So I've got a few suggestions.
Okay.
You should imagine, I've been thinking about this for many years. And it's well before the levelling up or any other of these things. What would make it fairer or more rational way to have? Because I agree with you. You can't destroy the whole idea of democracy or the exploration. We don't think we've ever had true democracy in this country, and we certainly couldn't have a royal family if we did, because it doesn't make any sense. The two are kind of oppositional. That's another episode, or it's every episode. It's till it changes.
That's for the next podcast.
Wait till you see all the other ones. Here's the crack. Imagine this. Imagine Parliament was moved to Coventry. It was a round building. The only way you could become a politician is if you'd lived in your constituency for 5 years. You couldn't send your kids to any other school but the one in your catchment area. The same thing with health services. You would have to have served on either this is disturbing you already, isn't it? You'd have to have served on either parish, town or county council, preferably all three, because then you get a really good idea. I think that there are having lived in the country, and you yourself will know this, there are very particular issues that pertain to, and that can be about isolation as well, living in the country, and lots of glorious things. So let's not pretend. I've worked on farms as well. There was something absolutely fantastic about having that, but it's hard. It's one of the hardest jobs, isn't it? It's all year round.
But
absolutely.
3 o'clock this morning,
absolutely. when you change from cattle just to plant-based, because you're going to be a really successful farmer in the future and grow fungi, you're going to enjoy that more because you don't have to milk anything. Anyway, that is another story. Again, we've got some more stories. Here's the bit. So that the idea that you can't get parachuted in, that you'd have to live in a community, that as a community you can access the whole of the information that is going to be like a little catalogue of what the Lib Dems are standing for. It doesn't matter which person's there, because it doesn't matter who your local candidate is, because if whoever is the national government, that is what happens. They don't represent their locality, they represent the party and what their agenda is. So they try and get those ridiculous more votes than the others. Come on, you're better educated than I'll ever be. Come on, Liz, do it. What's it called when you get a majority? They're all about majority, so they can put through any initiative that, when you look at it, when you really research it, is actually come through some sort of big corporate saying, change the policy on that, man, because we cannot make any money. All the things about pensions. Anyway, so what I'm saying is everyone would access, the Lib Dems are saying this, student grants, and the Labour Party go, what? Tony Blair, you've gone mad. Get out. Get him out of here altogether. He's a crazy guy. Is he Margaret Thatcher with a wig? No. Right, and so forth. You can't do campaigns. You can't have more money and win like in America. America, what they should just do is they should just have a way of auditing the accounts before they start the campaign, and just give the person that's managed to get more money in the bank, you win. Forget it, everyone. This is just a waste of energy, particularly for the climate change. So what I'm saying is, there's no campaigns, there's no thing. It's not this idea of personality politics. It's a person that's lived in that a person's lived in your constituency 5 years, maybe got a time to do it, they've got a family, they've got the same schools, they've got the same thing, whatever. No private schools, no private medicine, no none of that. So the people that represent you then, in there, know that any decision they make directly affects them, and because there's no two houses, by the way. You have to live in Chippenham. When you go to Coventry, If it's centre Coventry, yeah, you go to Coventry. It's the central city. Yeah, it's a round building that's got your office and your accommodation in it as a MP. Yeah. What do you think of this?
And it's circular, and you're not
circular,
not Judy. So yeah.
There you go. What are you thinking?
I think it's really great food for thought, and I think we do need wholesale change in our political system and our voting system. I think our parliamentary building should be a museum of some
Oh my
sort.
God, that's exactly what I think it should be. Just a museum.
I mean, I've even
Make
said
money
it
from
could even come and be sited in the Honda factory, which is closing. I mean, there's a lot of space there, there's buildings there, that would save money.
Yeah.
Yes, I think we do need changes. I think that having too many draconian rules, as a Liberal, I struggle with.
Yeah.
I grew up at a time in South Wales where I ended up in private school because my parents moved house, and in those days you had to go to your local school. And I went to a private school because my local school was failing. And so I don't know if I could buy into those restrictions again. But we're talking about micro detail.
But I'm saying your school, no school would fail, because every person that was representing that constituency would know that it's in light invested self-interest. Like, I'm going to have to use this health service in this locality. There isn't. I'm really sceptical. I've got to say this about Boris Johnson using St Thomas's, where two of my sons were born. I'm not saying. If you're telling me that Boris Johnson, as the Prime Minister, uses the National Health Service, I'm going to find that quite...
He didn't use the National Health Service.
That's what I'm saying. There's no way in the world...
He was on the top floor, wasn't he?
Which, if he was. What I'm saying is there's no way... Well, it was reported, that, and it just happens I know that the hospital because two of my sons were born in it, but here's the crack. He does not use the National Health Service. So reporting what happened there... is either not quite it doesn't, does he? He's got private health. He's a Conservative. He's a Tory.
Well, the whole ethos of many of the Conservatives, and I mean, let's be honest, the moderate ones have all been ousted.
Yeah.
The whole ethos is to have a pay-as-you-go system, which is against every single thing that I believe.
Another great Welsh person, Nye Bevan.
Exactly.
Yeah. A lot to be proud of.
Lots to be proud of in Wales. Yeah. Yes, absolutely. I love Wales. I would. I came away from Wales because of Thatcherism. There was no work there, and moved to London, and have ended up back here where I went to school in Wiltshire. And I love both places, but yes, Wales is where I identify, it's where I was born, and that's my identity as such. And there are some great people there. It's a great culture, but it's tough for Wales, and it's going to get a lot tougher being out of the EU as things.
Interesting, isn't it? That they voted. I can understand the whole EU thing is a smoke and mirrors thing anyway, isn't it? There's people who benefit from it are voting, had voted for the benefits that they receive from it, and lots of the rural communities in Cornwall and Wales, etc., were benefiting maybe more than they even understood. Particularly some we worked in Wales as well. Did a fantastic project, homeless project, thanks to Melanie C, actually, in Swansea. What a fantastic place. And then the Mumbles Mile, and then the Gower. Oh, sorry, just lovely. I used to go to Wales a lot because going across to Ireland, what have you. But I think that the whole EU thing got the message and whatever got mixed up. But your normal everyday person in places like Wales, Cornwall, in the rural areas, didn't see what the benefits were, and I can understand in a way why they might have voted against it. I didn't vote either way because I just don't believe, seriously, one way or the other. There's loads of problems with bureaucracy in EU, but then I don't trust any of the governments.
As I said to everybody, if you started analysing what goes on in your local council or any institution, you would be like, oh, this is rubbish. There would be something that you're critical about, and probably a lot you're critical about. Every system is flawed. Yeah. The question for the referendum wasn't about, is the EU flawed? The question was, are we benefiting?
Yeah, ridiculous.
Are we benefiting from being within it? And of course we are. I mean, the very first thing is that, we've both got children. I've got grandchildren. They all have lost the opportunities that we had as youngsters to go and study and work abroad. We've lost the chance of going to retire.
Unless, of course, you have an Irish passport.
Oh, well, yes, then you're okay.
Unless your wife is from Croatia. You know what I'm saying now, Lizzie?
Well,
Check
you're
out
okay with that then. You know,
I haven't got it yet.
there's
There's a big
there's a
backlog.
lot of things, as well as, you know, the deregulation agenda around food standards and safety and all of those things.
The bits that were golden, the environmental bits definitely, and the workers' rights. Because I think if everyone really understood what the game was, it's like, who controls the workforce? That's all it is,
But
isn't it?
nothing's changed, really. Theresa May's favourite saying, from really the control of the big corporations in the slave trade to today, in that they want to deregulate. And of course, you can see the far left also wanting this, because it brings back power to the unions.
Yeah.
Because if there's struggle and strife, then the unions get power as well.
Yeah.
And that's why, going back to your ideal system, is the same as reading Animal Farm to me, in that it's lovely to think everything could be perfect. But unfortunately, and I see this with the cattle in our sheds, it's not just human nature.
In your sheds at the moment.
It is nature.
The mushrooms are coming, Liz, I'm telling you.
I know for the cattle. There's always a head cow.
Yeah.
And there's always a head person. There's always somebody that wants to have power over somebody else. And unfortunately, I don't know how to remedy that.
Oh, I'm doing it, mate. I've got, seriously. So that was just one small element.
So how do you remedy certain people, like Boris Johnson?
Okay, well, you obviously you can't be voted as an MP if you went to a private school, because they'd still exist, because you would know if you know anything about sort of child psychology.
You can't surely believe that every person that wants to have control and power over another individual only goes to a private school.
No, not at all. But the reason why I'm saying is you wouldn't have it. Back in the day, you weren't allowed to be on a jury if you were a butcher or worked in an abattoir.
Yes.
Do you see what I'm saying?
Yes.
Right. That's what I'm saying. So therefore, if you've grown up with the idea of, wait a minute, why am I here? Why am I not with my people that love me? Wait a minute,
This reminded me, not long after Henry's the Crown Court case around Henry, which went on for 3 months, and it is an extraordinary experience going through that and what it's like. I went to Lancaster Castle, which was the last remaining working castle. One is now the prison's closed there now, but it was still working right there. And if I could say to anyone, go there for an inspirational trip about crime and punishment, and realise that yes, the changes that have been very, very small in many ways, but the whole thing is saying, right, you're guilty of murder. They take them upstairs, they open the doors, and everybody's, it was a family outing in those days. They were all on the hill, and they put them on a chair, and then they pushed them out, and they were hanged. Yeah. And that's how people, the society, got catharsis from crime. And I think there's a lot to be learned from looking at what we've done as a society with the slave trade, with crime and punishment, with what we've done with our societies. And yes, aspiring to do better. I can't promise to say that I found the solution for what that is, apart from being positive about people being in power and actually spending some time and listening and understanding, instead of thinking, all those politicians, they're all the same, they're all self-serving. Well, yes, a lot of them are, but the only way we can change that is if more people do what I'm doing and actually stand up for their community as better people. So that means you're next. When are you going to be elected?
Because here's the thing. Strange that you said that. So, bizarrely, over the years, so Candy's been going for 23 years. I've been in lots of different environments where people say, and this is possibly why one of the local Conservative councillors probably put his nose out a bit. I was at one of these youth board meetings, and he said to me, "Oh, you're quite good at this. You should become a councillor." And unfortunately, because I probably I'm on the spectrum somewhere of whatever, I just said, "No, I'd rather be effective." I don't think you ever recover from that, because here's the bit. The urgency of how we have to respond as an organisation to some of the issues that we face around all sorts of issues with social services, with families, and all the support organisations around it, working with the police, doing some great work with the police, and doing football tournaments, community football tournaments, which we'll have to invite you to when you're elected to come and see. Because to be fair to Angus, he did come up and see that one of our diversionary, healthy projects. But football's not for everyone, so we do the arts, and we do life skills, and we do cooking, and we do food preparation, food growing, and everything you can talk about relationship based that allows and take young people on residentials here, there, or never. We've been as far as America before to allow them to see, particularly kids in care, how societies like the Navajo and the Pueblo, because we went to their reservations, lived, and how they survived all of that climatic, environmental change, but psychological change of being oppressed by a whole race of people that came across. Not only did they take the lands and kill them, rape them and whatever, that was a hell of a weekend, that they had diseases and everything else brought upon them, but an ideology that doesn't make sense. It's like, what are you doing, you crazy people? You think you're advancing, you're destroying your habitat.
Yeah.
Right. So for those reasons, there's so much of that to do. I haven't got a brain that could sit in a room and knowing how the reality of pain and hardship, how quick it works and how slow it's amended. I would probably, and bless the mother of my sons, for this is the mother of my daughter, mother of my sons also said, do you think you should run? I think she meant just run. Could you keep running and don't stop till in Newcastle? You should run. And then she said, yeah, but or would you just tip the tables over?
Yeah, I had that.
Because that's the problem. I know too much about the reality of it.
I had that feeling for sure, and I did through Henry's case get to know a lot of journalists, and one of them in particular said to me, "You should run. You've learnt so much. You should run for office." And I just said, "Oh, get out of here! I'm not doing that. There's no way," because I didn't like the idea of being feasted on even more, I suppose, and you know you get a lot of criticism, and you know there's a lot to do, but. When Brexit happened, I really felt that, and it, you know, after many other things that were going on as well, I felt that something was really going wrong, and so I felt guilty. I thought, goodness, actually, I can communicate well. It's one of my skills. I am passionate, and I'm strong, and I'm fiery, and nobody's going to tell me what to vote for.
I'm telling you, she's Irish. You can't do that shit. Well, they're brothers and sisters. In your
apparently I got it from Auntie Maggie, they used to say in the family. But I'm not going to be pushed around and told what to do. Nobody's whipping me and telling me what to vote. I feel very sound in those decisions because I'm you know, I want to be fair. I'm a middle child. You know, all of those things. And I think one of the things I got from boarding school was actually a sense of fairness. And a community, which was good about the school where I was at, which was not the old-fashioned kind of type. It was very much a liberal school and very free. And coming from a convent where they were very, very strict and very structured and very wrong, cruel, very cruel. That I saw the two things together, and I grew with the liberal feelings, and it really made me the person that I am today. So, you know, I'm here. Look, I'm doing this. I've stood for Parliament twice, and
Wow, fair play. Against who?
Oh my goodness. I stood in 2019 against the worst rated MP in Parliament, number 650, Geoffrey Clifton Brown.
Really? Where's he? Who is
in Cotswolds, because I live right at the top of
Yeah.
North Wiltshire. So for me, my local town is Cirencester.
But I have to say, it is actually technically in the Cotswolds, that part of North Wilts, isn't it?
It's not technically,
Is
but
it not?
it's in terms of...
Area of outstanding natural beauty. Isn't Cirencester in there?
Yeah, but Cirencester's in the
Oh no,
Cotswolds,
so
but
that is
I'm
it.
just
No,
south
no.
of there, yeah. I'm near
there's
Cricklade.
a place, Cricklade. There's somewhere I thought it was. I thought someone moved it was.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter. You
so
know
where I live is not an area of outstanding beauty, but it's not far from that area.
Yeah.
So it's near the Cotswold Water Park. So
Right.
so yeah, I just thought, well, let's give it a go, you know, and try and get even a standing. You're getting a message out. You're given a platform for that election.
Yeah.
So now I really, this job in particular, I like. I wouldn't have to go to London. It's not really such a, it's not such a party. You're not pulled by your party. You are left to kind of get on and do a job. You have to be unbiased. It's not there for those reasons. So for me, I'm passionate about doing it, you know, and it also means I'm close to my husband and I don't have to keep being in London every day.
Yeah.
But so I'm going to give it a go and continue to do what I do. But I don't know at the moment, just as we're about to embark on the campaign, the thought of having to go through another campaign is Not exciting, but we'll give it a go, and hopefully we might get elected and bring change, because in Wiltshire there are 7 Conservative MPs. The council has been dominated by the Conservatives forever. We are the worst funded police authority, one of the worst in the entire country. So the Conservatives are using this area, which is a Conservative stronghold, to really propel their careers, but they're not doing anything for Wiltshire. In fact, they're starving us of funding. And they're selling off our police stations, and the court here in Chippenham, which was only built 20 years ago through public funding, demolished and sold off as a supermarket. I don't think the people that are in power here in Wiltshire care about Wiltshire. I don't, and that comes back to you saying they don't really. The people that are standing for office ought to be from the area, but that's up to the electorate. They have to look at that and think about that and say, who am I voting for?
Paul Weller famously once said, and I'm not talking about my old PE teacher from Sheldon, although I could be, Paul Weller from the Jam / Style Council / Paul Weller.
I used to have a crush on Paul Weller.
Paul Weller's a fantastic geezer. I'm very fortunate to have met him a couple of times. He's great.
I've seen him live quite a few times.
Yeah, wicked. Next time we go to a gig. What's this turning into? I don't know, everyone. Okay, this is nice, don't it? You've ever police commissioner. That's it. I was there. I was there backstage with him. Yeah.
Jack Savaretti was the night before, or I can't remember. They're both on the same weekend.
The last time. Yeah, I was there. It was great, wasn't it?
It was very
fair
good.
play. Oh, I like you even more.
Music is important.
Because, but when I was a teen and he was saying the public want what the public gets what the public want, going underground, by the way, is that the people don't know, do they? They're just. I remember saying to Carol Gorman, who used to be the North Wilts person at one stage, that councillors are, by a lot of the officers, are treated like mushrooms, in that they're generally kept in the dark and fed something that you wouldn't want to eat yourself. So, in the same way, the public are in lots of ways. There's a game at foot that they don't really understand. They kind of think it happens, not because they're dumb, by the way, because I am one of them. This is because it's how the game works. If you have control of the media, which is literally how most people have ever got elected, Murdoch, Maxwell as well, so anyone and everyone, the horrendous levels they're prepared to go to, Billy Dowler, and getting.
Well, it sells papers.
It's terrible. But this is the nature of it, so it's insidious, isn't it? All parts of the reset needs to happen, but the reason we're doing this is local media, isn't it? With local people talking about local issues. We talk about world issues, of course we can talk about, because that's the beauty. There's no censorship, because I want, like you, everyone to get on, use their phones and whatever, to say what they think, to get involved, to pass information, and to allow each other. And it's not about and I've had to learn this, as you can imagine, particularly coming from Ireland. It's not about fighting your enemies. It's about, you can't shake hands with your clenched fists, etc. It's about, is it about coming alongside and everyone finding an equitable, peaceful coexistence that isn't reliant on exploitation?
I think it's about inspiration, isn't it? It's about inspiring people to do and want better and to be optimistic and also ambitious. And that ambition should extend beyond the self. And that's probably something that I learned from being with nuns as a youngster. It's something I will say was very, very, is still very much within me, is the kind of religious right road and wrong road. I think art do have a place, because we can all make a decision.
Yeah, but you're telling me that human beings intrinsically need somebody dressed like that, with that type of thing, to tell what's right and wrong.
No, they don't.
Little sister, you got that wrong.
And no, there's no way that I would send my kids or grandchildren to what I went through. But what I mean is that my parents were actually, they weren't religious, but they sent us to a convent. And I wasn't even baptised. So I was persecuted by the nuns. My sister and I were persecuted by the nuns because we were told we were going to go to purgatory.
Purgatory, forever. That's what they told my mother.
My mother used to go, what are you talking about? And I used to go to bed with this rosary under my pillow, hidden, going, please don't send me to purgatory. Because I was frightened.
And that's how it works, ladies and gentlemen. That's it. It's a particular type of child, I was going to say exploitation, brainwashing. I just don't think there should be any religious schools at all. If religion was so good, right, well, people will find it naturally when they're adults. It's funny how they have to indoctrinate you as a child. My mother did the same thing. I wasn't going to get my kids, after having gone through an Irish Catholic upbringing, christened at all. And then she wasn't very well, so as they're getting in the Irish Catholic, I said to Sue, like,
just in case.
Let's just,
have the insurance policy.
And then she did this on the phone, not on my fingers, but on a real phone. She'd say, "Oh Jesus, if the boys die, they'll be in purgatory forever." And I was thinking, she's probably on the other end of the line, laughing her head off. So I succumbed to that with the first two, and I had a friend who was a priest in London. Marvellous chap, really amazing, really intelligent, what have you, but a priest nonetheless. So you kind of like, for me, that kind of limited his understanding of the world. But fair play to him, he's a beautiful person. So we did 2 christenings with him, and because he wasn't a traditional priest in the same way, and lots of my friends are actors and musicians, he was, I think, the West End theatre priest. So that's how I got to meet him, through a mutual friend who was an actor in the West End, and he introduced this priest who was really fantastic, and I met him on nights out and all this sort of thing, and find out vicariously he was a priest, by the way, not in the ceremony. So when he did the ceremony, my mum was disgusted because he was hilarious. He was so funny, and all my friends said, "Wow, if my priest had been like that when I was at church, I would still be at church." I'm saying it's strange, but underneath what he's saying, it's still kind of weird, isn't it? But he's a lovely guy. Now, my mum totally rejected it. So with our 3rd child, we had him welcomed in the grounds of Lake Okabe, thank you, Graham Hood, in a teepee, and had them all rebranded as Sioux Indians. And Sue's, well, of course, Sue's dad, bless him, he came to me in the Red Lion and Lake, and he said, "Well, it's just one set of mumbo jumbo for the other, isn't it?" And I was like, yes, indeed. Because doctrines and stuff that's not checked out, and this is the whole thing, you know, I take your point. I believe that people should be able to stand up for themselves. The fact that the system has been weighed so heavily against them with their opportunity, education, shared optimism, actually, access to not just information, but also to the wherewithal to be able to have a prosperous and a positive life. I don't think that's equitably distributed. So until it is, we're going to have imbalance in society. And like Marx says, and I'm not a Marxist, but just one of the things that people remember him saying is that apart from religion is the opiate of the people, and how bizarrely opiate is the opiate of the people. That's weird, isn't it? Yeah. Afghanistan, everyone, think about it. Right, but that when you have, capitalism has an inherent conflict. The workers are always trying to fight for more, and the business owners and whatever are always trying to keep the costs down. So straight away you're going to have some type of like, oh, them and us scenario. There's too many of those areas in the society where that disparity has been allowed to foster. In your new position, he said, in your new position, yes. Do I call you madam, police inspector, whatever, police inspector, come on, sergeant.
No, number one, I always want to be called Liz. Very informal, and I'm very much a team player, so there's none of that hierarchical stuff. I don't need that. I don't need feeling that.
Oh no, I get the sense that you don't.
I think that you get work done by empowering people.
There you
get work done by getting people to feel valued.
Yep.
And at the moment, Wiltshire Police don't feel valued. They are not being funded adequately. They've been, through years of austerity and cuts, and so we haven't got a lot to build on.
Yeah.
But I will be taking my feisty personality to the heart of the government and really fighting for more money for Wiltshire, because it's outrageous that we are not funded adequately. And nowadays, with the internet and the changes in crime. It used to be that sleepy places like Wiltshire didn't really have much crime. Now criminals are feasting out here. It's easy to come out, we're seeing with county line drugs gangs, all of these things, and we're not being funded. So I am going to bring that, and we have got the Justice Minister in this county, and he's doing nothing for Wiltshire. So I will be...
Who is the Justice Minister?
Robert Buckland.
Oh, of course, same geezer. Right.
So I will be taking my strong and fiery personality, which they know already because that's how I got the judicial reviews, and they'll be saying, oh no, not that woman again. That's where it'll be going, because I will be fighting for that, and I'll be fighting hard, because if our police feel valued and well paid, they're going to be doing a good job, and we need to make sure that all of those things that are involved in policing and criminal justice work for Wiltshire, because whether you've been a victim of crime or you've been a perpetrator of crime, or whether you've got caught with a speeding ticket or anything else, ultimately we all share and live in this county, and we all deserve to get the best out of it, and the police should work with us, and we should all be one happy community.
Yeah, and to their credit, they've always, when we've made films about prevention with young people, the thing about County Alliance is obviously big on our radar as well. They've always been amazingly supportive, whether it's being in the films, whether it's providing uniforms, police stations, seriously, and they do our football tournament every year. Final question, 21st of June, in the year of COVID, 2021. Young Boris.
It's my husband's birthday.
Right, it's the 5th person that said this.
Oh, really?
So Ross Heading, it's his birthday.
Oh, is it?
Jake Kolmanovich, who's one of our fantastic facilitators from Bristol, is one of our music therapists at Can Do. It's his. Now I'm going to forget who else is it. There's a few people. Anyway, your husband. There's 2 more people that have said it's their birthday as well. Now Boris, bless him, has said we can have a knees up in the park. Okay. So we're going to try and do this Unlock Reset Festival on the 21st. It's going to hopefully be. It's definitely Eagle One have already said we can use this and the atrium as for a big. There'll be lots of talks as well, and poetry and all sorts of stuff, but in John Coles Park, in Monkton Park. My next question to you, Your Honour, is, will you come and have a dance with me? I've got Teresa, there's a lot of people I'm going to be dancing with. You
only want to dance with me, I'm the best dancer.
Really? Right, I just want your husband to know that I will dance with him as well.
He's not, we'll try.
What I'm saying is, it's not a thing about you being a lady.
No, we'd love to.
It's about dancing. I literally was the first kid. I was the first male to get a dance qualification at Sheldon School.
Really?
Yeah.
As a youngster,
I was
do all the dancing at the Northern Soul. Yeah, one of my friends won the. Yes.
It's fantastic dancing, isn't it?
It is.
It is. Can you still do it?
Yes.
Oh, look! See this place here. Is this not a good place? 21st, Northern Soul, out there, do it, because people got to check Northern Soul dancing out. It is quite amazing.
Where I grew up in Porthcawl, there was a big community of us used to really be into this kind of...
Oh, we should get Dickie from the Consti, if you're watching this. We should get the Consti on board on the 21st and do a Northern Soul weekend.
I could even get my sister to come down. You never know.
Yeah, and what about the sculptor?
That's her.
That's what I'm saying. So look, here's the crack. These artists here are going to be, when this is open, going to be doing workshops in here. That's going to be recycled clothes over there, so people are going to learn how to make it. There's going to be t-shirts over there. There's all sorts of good stuff, pottery and films and whatever. But there'll be talks, exhibitions, information exchange. There's a Riverbank music studio downstairs, predominantly young people, etc., etc. We've got our own recording studio at Can Do. Please come and visit us at Can Do Arts.
I absolutely will.
Whether you become, the Queen, I don't care. Whatever you become, come anyway, because it might be another one of those things you go, oh, actually, I can see why that works and how we could utilise that, not necessarily us doing it, but other parts of the community.
Yeah. They did something similar in Cardiff, actually, which my sister did, was part of a few years ago. Where they used
I would try and speak like Richard Burton for the war.
Richard Burton.
Elizabeth. That sounded a little bit like Tom Jones, a little bit like Ivor the Tank Engine, and Elizabeth. Under Milkwood.
Do you know, under Milkwood, I won.
Beautiful, isn't it?
I won in Mid-Somerset Festival. I won the solo acting award for Under Milkwood. I played Lily Smalls.
Did you recite it or did you act it?
I acted it.
Okay, look. Okay.
Next time I'll do that. I've
got a better idea, because we make films.
Right, yes.
Right, so whether you be... No, not at all. I'm going to get you in a film.
Yeah, I'd love to.
Cool, you'll be on the tape. You are fantastic. I wish you all the luck in the world to... If is it luck? I don't believe in luck. For our sake, as a community, it'd be fantastic if you were the new police commissioner. That's not to say that anyone else wouldn't do a good job. I don't know. But you're the person right in front of me. You're the person that has been very forthright. I've got a great sense. I had this off with Teresa Hutton, who is the mayor. I know it's going to sound ridiculous, and she's conservative. Well, I don't think people in the working classes, by the way, they might kid themselves that they're conservatives, but if they looked at the history of the party, they realise they are, some sort of lackey that's carrying out their wishes. What a lovely woman she is. I thought, I know this sounds crazy, but I just didn't know her. And listening to what she does for a job, what she supports, how she is as a family person, and I think this is kind of why I wanted to do these things. We're doing this to other people, this podcast for other people in the community, how people have got through the pandemic. That's the other thing about the 21st, the Unlock Reset Festival, is about honouring people, and I think the police should be involved in this, because they need to be honoured. They've gone through it all. Paramedics, shop workers, sewage workers, you name it. In fact, everyone should name it. Who has helped them, whether it's the local council officers, whether it's local councillors, who's helped them get through the pandemic, and we should honour them publicly.
Yeah, that sounds fantastic.
Right, okay, so dancing,
I will be there.
bit of Northern Soul. I'm going to, seriously, I think it's fascinating. I think people should watch it out. You're great, thank you so much. I really have enjoyed
Thanks
this.
for giving me the opportunity to
Well,
chat.
no,
I've enjoyed it.
You're fantastic. I'm coming to the farm to change
You're more than welcome to
I
come
come with the young people to your farm. How about that?
we always encourage young people to come to
Well,
the farm.
we
It's very, very good
on a
for them to
day-to-day
be with the
basis.
animals. Yeah.
Definitely. Go.
Right.
Spinning